The night was colder than death itself. A storm of silver dust and ice winds moved through the dark streets of Zerath Prime, an alien city where even machines shivered from the cold. The sky was a pale gray filled with broken lights and the sound of howling air. Through this storm walked a woman, thin, trembling, and lost. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes a faint shade of silver. Her name was Lyra, but no one had called her that in months. To the world, she was only the escaped one. She wrapped her torn blanket tighter around her body. Her fingers were turning white from frostbite. Every breath came out as fog. She knocked on the first door she saw, her voice weak and shaking. "Please. Help me." The door opened just a crack. A yellow eye peered out from the shadow. Then the voice came, cold and afraid. "Go away. You shouldn't be here." The door slammed. Lyra fell to her knees, the sound echoing in the empty street. She looked at her hands, cracked and bleeding, and forced herself to stand again. She had already escaped death once. She wouldn't give up now. She walked to another door, then another. 17 doors in total. Every single one shut her out. Some looked at her with disgust. Some looked afraid. A few didn't open at all. The law of Zerath Prime was cruel. No one was allowed to help an escaped experiment. Anyone who did could be imprisoned, or worse. By the time she reached the 18th door, her body was shaking uncontrollably. Her vision blurred. She couldn't feel her legs. The storm grew louder, as if the whole planet wanted her gone. She lifted her hand and knocked weakly. Once, twice. The sound was barely a whisper against the roaring wind. The door opened slowly. Behind it stood a human man. Broad shoulders, dark hair, and tired eyes that had seen too many lonely nights. His name was Eli Grant, a worker from Earth who had crashed here years ago during a mining accident. Since then, he lived alone in this corner of the alien city, fixing broken machines to survive. When he saw her, he froze, a blue-skinned alien woman half dead standing in his doorway. Every story he'd ever heard warned him. Helping her meant death, but her eyes, they weren't wild or dangerous. They were scared. Pure fear mixed with pain. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. "Please, I can't. Breathe." Her legs gave out and she collapsed. Eli caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was ice cold. He could feel her pulse fading. For a second, he hesitated. He looked out at the empty street. If the patrol drones saw him with her, they'd both be finished. Then he looked at her again. A living being, dying on his doorstep. He made his choice. Eli pulled her inside and shut the door behind him. He laid her near the fire and wrapped her in his only thermal blanket. She shivered uncontrollably. He grabbed his emergency med kit and scanned her vitals. Her temperature was dangerously low, her oxygen levels dropping fast. "What have you gotten yourself into?" he muttered. Her eyes opened slightly. They'll find me. "Not tonight," he said. "You're safe here." She stared at him, confused. "You're human," he nodded. "Last time I checked." Her lips curved into a weak smile before she fainted. Eli sat beside her, staring into the fire. Outside, the sound of engines echoed in the distance, search drones sweeping the streets. Their red lights flashed through the cracks of the window. He turned off his power generator, darkening the room completely. The only light came from the fire's dim glow. He knew he had made a dangerous mistake. But something inside him, the part that still remembered what it meant to be human, told him he did the right thing. As the storm screamed outside, he whispered to himself, "Let them come. She's not dying tonight." Outside, a drone hovered near his roof. Its scanners hummed, searching for heat. For a moment, the red light paused, right above his cabin. Eli held his breath, then the drone moved on. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fire and the faint sound of Lyra's breathing. For the first time in years, Eli felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or what danger followed her. But deep down he sensed that by opening that door, his life and maybe the fate of two worlds had just changed forever. The storm outside didn't stop for hours. The wind screamed against the walls like an angry spirit, and ice covered the windows of Eli's small cabin. Inside, the fire burned low, throwing weak orange light across the floor. Lyra lay near the fire, wrapped in a blanket. Her breathing was shallow but steady now. Eli sat beside her, watching, unsure what he had just done. Helping an alien, especially one running from the law, wasn't just dangerous. It was suicide. He rubbed his face, feeling the cold sweat on his skin. What were you thinking, Eli? He whispered to himself. You should have shut the door. But even as he said it, he knew he couldn't have done that. He had seen the look in her eyes. Pure terror, the kind that haunts you forever. Suddenly she coughed. Eli jumped up and held her as she opened her eyes slowly. Easy, he said softly. You're safe here, she blinked, trying to focus. Where am I? My place, he replied. I found you half dead outside. You're lucky I had power cells for the heater. Her gaze moved around the small room. Metal shelves filled with broken tools, a cracked window covered with cloth, and a table with a few cans of food. It was no palace, but it was warm. I didn't think anyone would help me, she said weakly. Yeah, well, Eli said, half smiling. I make bad decisions sometimes. She gave a faint laugh, then coughed again. What's your name? He asked. Lyra, she whispered. I didn't mean to bring danger to you. Eli frowned. Danger? Before she could answer, a deep humming sound came from outside, the noise of a patrol drone. Eli's blood ran cold. He moved quickly, switching off the heater and lights. The room went dark except for the fading glow of the fire. He peeked through a small crack in the curtain. A red scanning beam passed over the houses nearby. The drone's metallic body hovered, searching for life signals. Eli looked back at Lyra. Stay quiet, he mouthed. She nodded, fear in her eyes. The drone stopped right in front of his cabin. A loud voice spoke through the speaker. Unauthorized heat signature detected. Residents, prepare for inspection. Eli's heart pounded. He knew they were coming. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the back of the cabin. There, behind a loose floor panel, was a narrow maintenance shaft, his emergency hideout. Get in, he said quickly. She hesitated. You'll be caught. Just move, he whispered harshly. They climbed down just as the front door burst open with a metallic crash. Heavy steps echoed through the room. Through the small crack in the floor, Eli could see the glowing boots of the robotic enforcers. A deep mechanical voice said, Scan in progress. The room filled with red light. The fire crackled once, then died completely. Lyra held her breath. Eli placed his hand gently over hers, signaling her to stay still. Seconds passed like hours. Finally, the voice spoke again. No life form detected. Proceed to next sector. Eli exhaled slowly as the sound of the drone faded away. When it was gone, he pushed the panel open and helped Lyra out. She looked at him, trembling. Why would you risk your life for me? Eli looked away. Because no one else would. He walked to the table, lighting a small emergency lamp. His face was tired, but his eyes were strong. Now you're going to tell me what's really going on. Who's chasing you? Lyra took a deep breath. Her voice shook as she spoke. They call me an experiment. I escaped from the government's research labs. They used me, tested me. I wasn't supposed to live. Eli stared at her, shocked. You're saying they were experimenting on you? She nodded slowly. They wanted to make something new. A body that could survive both human and alien worlds. But when I failed their tests, they tried to erase me. Eli's hands clenched into fists. That's not right. Lyra looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I just wanted to be free. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the sound of wind outside. Eli finally spoke, his tone quiet but full of resolve. Then you'll stay here, until we figure something out? Lyra's eyes widened. You can't, they'll kill you. Eli smiled sadly. I've been half dead for years. Maybe it's time I started living again. Lyra looked at him, and for the first time since her escape, she felt something warm, something she had forgotten existed. Hope. Outside, the storm finally began to fade. But deep in the sky, more patrol drones were already turning their scanners toward Eli's sector. The danger wasn't over, it was just beginning. The morning came gray and silent. The storm had passed, leaving the city buried in layers of shining frost. Every rooftop glimmered under the weak sunlight. But inside Eli's cabin there was no peace. He stood by the window watching the sky. Patrol drones still circled far above, black dots against the pale clouds. He knew they were looking for her. Lyra. She sat quietly near the fire, wrapped in his old jacket, watching him. Her face looked calmer now, but her eyes told a different story. They were full of fear and guilt. Eli, she said softly, You shouldn't have done this. You could still turn me in. Say I forced you. He turned toward her. Is that what you really want? She looked down. No, she whispered. He gave a faint smile. Then stop talking like that. I'm not turning you in, not after what I saw last night. Lyra didn't reply. She just stared at the flickering firelight, her thoughts heavy. She had seen humans before, but never one who cared enough to risk his own life for her. Eli started packing supplies, food packs, energy cells, old mining tools. If those drones come back, we'll need to move. I know a place underground, old tunnels from the mining days. They don't scan there. Lyra stood slowly, still weak. Why help me? He paused, thinking for a moment. Because I've been alone for too long, he said. And I'm tired of watching good people die while others do nothing. She smiled faintly, but her smile disappeared when a sudden loud noise shook the cabin walls. Boom! Eli's eyes widened. Down, get down! A blast of energy tore through the roof, scattering debris and smoke. The fire went out instantly. Red light filled the room, the mark of a government drone. Eli pulled Lyra behind the metal table as laser scans swept across the room. A robotic voice echoed through the air. Escaped subject detected. Unit 47 activating containment mode. Lyra's heart pounded. She grabbed Eli's arm. They found us. Eli reached for his toolkit and yanked out a small EMP grenade. I've got one chance. He rolled the device across the floor. A sharp pulse of blue light exploded and the drone dropped like a dead insect, smoke rising from its circuits. Come on, Eli shouted. We have to move now. They ran out the back into the freezing morning. The air bit their faces and the snow crunched under their boots. Behind them, sirens wailed. Eli led her toward the forest of steel pipes and frozen vents behind the mining district. This way. Lyra struggled to keep up, gasping for air. Eli, my lungs. He stopped and helped her lean against a wall. Her breathing was shallow again, every breath painful. He pulled a small oxygen capsule from his belt and pressed it to her mouth. Breathe this, she inhaled weakly. After a few seconds, her color returned slightly. You okay? She nodded slowly. For now. They kept moving until they reached a hidden hatch covered in ice. Eli kicked it open, revealing a dark tunnel below. Go first, he said. I'll close it behind us. They climbed down the metal ladder into the silence of the underground. The tunnel smelled of rust and dust, untouched for years. When the hatch shut above them, only darkness remained, broken by Eli's small wrist light. Lyra whispered, They won't stop, will they? Eli shook his head. No, not until they catch you. Or kill you, she shivered. I thought I could hide forever. I was wrong. He looked at her, his voice steady. Then we make sure they never find you again. They walked deeper into the tunnel. Water dripped from the ceiling. The air was cold but quiet, too quiet. Eli stopped suddenly. Wait, from the shadows ahead came a faint humming noise. Lyra held her breath. The sound grew louder, a swarm of scout drones gliding through the tunnels. Eli grabbed her hand. Run! They sprinted through the narrow passages, turning corners, their footsteps echoing. Behind them, the red glow of scanners grew brighter. Left, Eli shouted. There's a storage vault. They dove into an old chamber filled with mining crates. Eli slammed the heavy door shut and jammed it with a metal rod. The drones passed outside, their hum fading slowly. Lyra collapsed against the wall, gasping. We can't keep running forever. Eli crouched beside her, breathing hard. We won't. I'll find a way to fix this. She looked at him with tired eyes. You can't fix what's broken about this world. He smiled faintly. Maybe not the world, but I can fix what's in front of me. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. There was something human in his words, something her world had lost. In that cold, dark tunnel, hope sparked again. Small, fragile, but alive. Outside, above the ground, the Galactic News broadcast a new alert. Wanted, human male named Eli Grant, charged with assisting the escaped experimental subject. Reward, 10,000 energy units. Their faces now belonged to the hunted. But in the shadows below, humanity had already begun to fight back. The tunnels were silent again. Only the faint sound of dripping water echoed in the dark. Eli sat against a cold wall, his lamp flickering weakly. Lyra rested nearby, her breathing steady but shallow. They had been hiding for hours, maybe days. Time didn't matter down here. Eli stared at her, his mind full of questions. He wanted to know everything, who she really was, what she had escaped from, and why the entire planet wanted her dead. But for now, she was fragile, her eyes half closed from exhaustion. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, trembling like a weak flame. "They didn't just make me in that lab, Eli, they built me." Eli frowned. "Built you, you mean? Like a machine?" Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, I was born. But they changed me. My body wasn't strong enough for this world. My lungs couldn't process the air. So they replaced them with something new." She touched her chest gently as if afraid. They called it Project Hybrid. Their dream was to create a being who could live on both human and alien worlds. Eli stared in disbelief. "So you're saying your lungs are artificial?" She nodded. "Partly. The rest is..." He moved closer, curious but careful. "And that's why you escaped?" Her eyes darkened. "No, I escaped because they wanted to make more of me, thousands. But I wasn't a soldier. I was a test that went wrong. When I begged them to stop, they called me a failure and ordered my termination." Eli clenched his fists. "Monsters." Lyra gave a weak smile. To them it wasn't evil, just science. Silence filled the tunnel again. The truth hung heavy between them. After a while, Eli pulled out a small metal box from his bag. Inside were scattered tools, wires, microchips, and repair modules from his mining days. "If your lungs are artificial, maybe I can fix them," he said. "You've been struggling to breathe ever since the escape." Lyra looked uncertain. "You think you can?" Eli smiled a little. "I used to build machines that dug through planets. I think I can handle a pair of lungs." She laughed softly, the sound echoing through the tunnel. "You humans. Always so confident." He got to work scanning her with his handheld device. The holographic display showed flickering lines of energy running through her chest. "There's your problem," he murmured. "The stabilizer coil is damaged, probably from exposure to the cold." He took a deep breath. "I can repair it, but I'll need to reroute the energy flow manually." "It's going to hurt?" Lyra looked at him steadily. "Do it." Eli hesitated, then began the process. Tiny sparks of light flickered across the device as he adjusted the internal flow. Lyra winced, gripping his arm tightly. "Almost there," he whispered. Just a few seconds more, the scanner beeped. Her breathing evened out. For the first time since he met her, she took a full, steady breath without pain. She smiled faintly. "It feels warm." Eli grinned. "You're running better than my generator now." They both laughed quietly. The sound of laughter felt strange in the darkness. It was something neither of them had heard in a long time. But the moment didn't last. A low hum filled the tunnel again. Eli froze. Lyra's smile faded. "They're tracking energy signals." He switched off the scanner immediately, plunging them back into near darkness. "Damn it," he whispered. That fix might have sent out a power spike. They grabbed their things and moved deeper into the tunnels, following a narrow path that led toward the old mining core. The deeper they went, the thicker the air became, heavy with dust and metal. After nearly an hour of walking, they found an abandoned control room. Rusted panels lined the walls, and a cracked window showed the glow of molten rock far below. Eli looked around. "This used to be the central hub. We can stay here for a while." Lyra sat beside the window, staring at the red glow below. "You shouldn't have helped me," she said softly. "You've lost everything now." Eli leaned against the wall. "I didn't have much to lose. Maybe this, helping you, is the first thing that's made sense in years." Lyra turned to look at him, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. "You risk your life for someone you barely know. That's not logical." "Logic doesn't keep people warm," he said simply. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was alive, filled with trust. But above ground, things were changing. In the capital towers of Zerath Prime, a cold voice echoed through the council chamber. "Subject 47 and human accomplice confirmed alive. Send extraction units. Bring them in, dead or alive." As Lyra looked up at the flickering ceiling lights, she felt a chill run through her. Somewhere, somehow, she knew the hunters were already on their way, and this time hiding wouldn't be enough. The silence in the tunnel didn't last long. It never did. Eli was adjusting the broken power lines in the control room when a sharp vibration ran through the floor, like thunder crawling through the ground. He froze. Lyra looked up from her spot near the window, eyes wide. "Eli, what is that sound?" He pressed his ear to the metal wall. The rumble grew louder. Not from above, from below. Then came a mechanical roar that shook the entire chamber. The old mining alarms flickered to life for the first time in years. They had found them! Move! Eli shouted. They're coming from the lower shafts. Lyra jumped to her feet, grabbing her cloak. They're using tunneling mechs. They'll crush everything in their path. The walls trembled again. Cracks formed in the concrete ceiling. Dust fell like rain. Eli grabbed his backpack and ran to the emergency lift, pulling Lyra along. The metal doors groaned as he forced them open. Get in! She hesitated. Eli, this lift goes deeper, not up. I know, he said, eyes fierce. Up is death. Down might be life. The lift creaked and began to descend. The sound of the mechanical diggers echoed from above as bright red plasma beams tore through the tunnel they had just left. Lyra clutched the railing. They won't stop. They'll dig until the planet's core if they have to. Eli's voice was calm, but his hands trembled. Then we make them chase ghosts. The lift reached the bottom, a massive underground maze of half-finished tunnels and glowing veins of molten rock. The air was hot and heavy, filled with the hiss of steam. They stepped out into the darkness. Eli scanned the area and pointed toward a narrow passage. Old mining rails. If we can reach the transport carts, we can ride them to the other side of the ridge. As they ran, Lyra stumbled. Her chest flared with pain again. Eli caught her before she fell. Not now, Lyra. Stay with me. She gasped for air. The heat, my lungs. Can't handle it. He tore a cooling pad from his bag and pressed it against her chest. Breathe. Don't give up now. Her eyes glowed faintly, silver and scared. Why do you keep saving me? Eli smiled grimly. Because maybe saving you is the only thing left worth doing. They moved forward deeper into the tunnels. Behind them, the sound of metal claws scraping rock grew louder. Red light began to flood the walls again. The hunters were closing in. Finally, they reached the rail platform, a long stretch of rusted tracks with several small transport carts. Eli jumped into one and powered it up. The engine coughed, then came alive with a low hum. Get in, he yelled. Lyra climbed beside him as the cart started moving. It picked up speed, racing through the dark tunnel. Sparks flew from the wheels, but soon more drones appeared behind them, hovering fast and armed. Plasma bolts sliced through the darkness. Eli ducked as one beam burned through the cart's side. Hold on! He slammed his fist on the control panel. The old cart surged forward faster than it was ever meant to go. The tunnel ahead split in two. Left or right? Lyra shouted. Left! Always left! Eli yelled back. They swerved left, sparks flying everywhere. One of the drones crashed into the wall and exploded. The rest kept chasing. Lyra looked down at her hands. They were glowing faintly now, the veins under her skin lighting up like blue fire. Eli. I can overload the energy in my lungs, she said breathlessly. It might create an EMP pulse strong enough to fry their systems. He glanced at her, horrified. It could kill you. She shook her head. Only if I fail. Before he could stop her, Lyra closed her eyes. The air around her began to hum. The blue glow grew brighter until the entire cart shimmered. The drones closed in, meters away. Then a blast of energy exploded outward, silent but powerful. The lights went out. Every drone dropped from the air, lifeless. The cart kept rolling in the dark, slowing down until it stopped at the end of the track. Eli looked at her. Lyra, wake up! She lay motionless, her skin faintly glowing. After a few terrifying seconds, she took a weak breath. Her eyes opened. Still here. Eli laughed in relief, his voice shaking. You scared me to death, she smiled faintly. You humans scare easily. He helped her up, looking ahead. Through the broken wall at the end of the tunnel, he could see the faint blue light of open sky. A way out. They had escaped the tunnels. For now. But above ground, their faces were now on every holoscreen in the city. The order had changed from capture to kill on sight. As Eli helped Lyra step into the cold dawn light, he whispered, Let them come. We're not done yet. The world above the tunnels looked like another planet. Cold gray skies stretched forever, broken only by the sharp bones of ruined buildings. Smoke rose from far-off factories. The air smelled of metal and ash. Eli and Lyra stumbled through the rocky wasteland until they reached an abandoned communication outpost, an old military bunker left to rot. Its walls were cracked, its lights dead, but to Eli it looked like hope. We can rest here, he said. Lyra nodded weakly. Her steps were slow, her face pale. The pulse in her neck flickered faintly with blue light. She had used too much energy during the escape. Inside, dust covered everything. Old consoles lined the walls, and a cracked computer screen flickered as Eli tried to power it. He connected wires, rerouted cables, and finally the ancient system hummed to life. Lyra watched him, her voice soft. You still believe you can fight them? Eli didn't look up. I'm not fighting them. I'm rewriting their world, she frowned. What do you mean? He turned the screen toward her. The interface displayed Galactic Identity Grid, Central Access Node. Lyra's breath caught. That's the main database. Every citizen's record, every subject tag, everything. Exactly, Eli said. If I can get inside, I can erase your record. Make it like you never existed to them. Lyra stared at him, shocked. That's impossible. You'd need to breach 5 layers of encryption. Even the Syndicate can't do that. Eli smiled faintly. Maybe they never tried hard enough. He began typing, fingers flying across the keyboard. Lines of code appeared on the screen like lightning. The system fought back, locking, jamming, resisting, but Eli pushed through. Sparks flew from the old machine as power surged through the circuits. Lyra stepped closer. Eli, you can't. If they trace the signal. They already have, he interrupted. That's why I have to finish this fast. Outside, the sky began to darken again. A distant rumble echoed, ships entering the atmosphere. Lyra's voice trembled. They're coming, Eli kept typing. Then let them. I just need 5 more minutes. Lyra watched him with tears in her eyes. Why are you doing this? You'll be caught. You'll die. He stopped for a moment and looked at her. Because you deserve to live free. Because someone has to show them what being human means. She shook her head, voice breaking. You think kindness can change a galaxy? Maybe not, he said quietly. But it can change one life. That's enough for me. The computer beeped. Access granted, Eli exhaled. Got it. On the screen, thousands of files appeared, identities, genetic codes, tracking data. He searched for her number. Subject 47 Lyra. When he found it, he hesitated. Lyra looked at him confused. Why did you stop? He whispered, because when I delete this, it's like you were never born, no record, no proof you ever existed. Her silver eyes met his. Then I'll live through your memory. He smiled sadly. That's enough for me. He hit delete. The system flashed red, then green. Record erased. Identity purged. It was done. But before they could breathe, the bunker shook violently. The roof cracked as a massive blast hit the surface. The sound of engines roared above. Enforcer ships had arrived. Lyra grabbed his arm. We have to go. Eli shook his head. No. They'll track the source signal back to this exact spot. If you run now, you'll have a chance. And what about you? She asked, panic in her voice. He smiled faintly. I'll keep them busy. No. She cried. I won't leave you again. Eli reached out, touching her cheek gently. You already gave me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago. What? She whispered. Purpose. The ceiling exploded. Drones stormed in, red lights flashing. Eli turned, grabbing a plasma rifle from the floor. He fired at the first wave, covering Lyra as she ran toward the back exit. Go, he shouted. Run, Lyra. Tears filled her eyes. I'll come back for you. I know you will, he said with a smile, and then turned back toward the door, facing the enemy head-on. As she escaped into the storm, she heard the sound of plasma fire and explosions behind her. The sky burned red. By the time the ships pulled away, the bunker was gone, nothing left but smoke and ashes. Lyra fell to her knees miles away, watching the fire fade in the distance. Her hands shook and she whispered his name. Eli. The wind carried the ashes into the sky, glowing faintly in the light. And though the world believed the human was dead, Lyra knew. Somewhere in that fire, a piece of his courage still lived. Years passed. The war ended, the storms faded, and the cities of Zerath Prime slowly rebuilt themselves. The great machines that once hunted the weak now stood as silent ruins, half buried in ice and dust. But among the wreckage of a broken world, stories still traveled, whispered from colony to colony, ship to ship. Stories about a blue-skinned woman who healed the sick, saved the lost, and defied every law written by fear. Her name was Lyra, though most only knew her by another name, the Starborn Healer. She moved from planet to planet, never staying long, always helping those no one else would touch. Wherever she went, hope seemed to follow. But deep inside, she carried something heavier than memory. A promise. One quiet evening, under the violet skies of a small colony moon, Lyra sat by the river, watching the reflection of stars ripple on the water. Children played nearby, chasing small glowing insects through the grass. One little girl, curious and bright, walked up to her. "Miss Lyra," the girl said softly. "Is it true? You were once hunted by the galaxy?" Lyra smiled gently. "That's what they say." "Then why aren't you hiding anymore?" the girl asked. Lyra looked at the horizon where the twin suns were setting. "Because I don't need to hide from what I've become. Not anymore." The girl pointed at the silver pendant hanging around Lyra's neck. It was old and scratched, shaped like a small metal tag. The number 18 was engraved on it. "What does 18 mean?" she asked. Lyra touched the pendant, her eyes softening. It was the number of the door that opened when all others closed. The girl tilted her head. "A door?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, 17 doors turned me away when I begged for help. The 18th belonged to a human, and he let me in." The little girl smiled. "He must have been very brave." Lyra's voice was quiet. "Braver than anyone I've ever known." Later that night, when the colony slept, Lyra stood alone at the edge of a cliff, gazing at the stars. She pulled a small device from her pocket, a memory cube. It was old and cracked, but still worked. She pressed the button, and a holographic image appeared before her. Eli Grant smiling, grease on his hands, the same tired eyes filled with stubborn hope. His voice echoed softly from the cube. "If you ever find peace, Lyra, live it for both of us." Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "I'm trying, Eli, every day." She looked up at the stars, the endless sea of light. Somewhere out there, she believed, part of him still existed, maybe not in body but in spirit. The part that believed kindness could change the universe. The next morning, Lyra prepared to leave the colony. Her ship was small, old, but reliable. As she powered it up, an alert flashed across her console. Encrypted transmission detected. Her heart skipped. No one knew this frequency. It was one Eli had used long ago. She opened the message, at first only static. Then a voice, faint, rough, but unmistakably human. "If you're hearing this, Lyra, it means I made it out. Not whole, but alive." Her hands shook. "They took me off-world. A prison colony. But I escaped. I've been hiding, fixing, waiting, and now I think I found something worth fighting for again." A set of coordinates appeared on her screen. She stared at them for a long moment, then whispered, "Eli." Without hesitation, she activated the engines. The ship lifted from the ground, leaving a swirl of silver dust behind. As the colony shrank beneath her, she whispered one last goodbye to the children, to the peace she'd built, and to the life she was about to risk again. The stars stretched ahead like endless paths of light. Her ship's systems glowed softly, and the pendant around her neck swung gently as if pulled by fate. "Eli," she said quietly, "you opened the door once. This time I'll find you." Her ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving a trail of blue fire that lit up the sky for a brief, beautiful moment. And somewhere out there, in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a lone human looked up from his workbench. Hearing the faint hum of a familiar engine, he smiled. "Took you long enough." Later, the galaxy would speak of them both, the human and the hybrid, as legends. One gave mercy when the universe offered none. The other carried that mercy to the stars. And in every story told across distant worlds, there was always a lesson whispered at the end. Sometimes, humanity isn't about where you were born. It's about the door you choose to open.